Hi guys, so in today's video I'm going to talk to you about zoom lenses versus prime lenses and what the positives and negatives are of each, and hopefully this video will help you decide whether you think a zoom lens might be the best option for you or if you want to go for a prime lens. So I'm down at the beach and the first lens I've got is the 18-105 here, and it's an f4 constant aperture. So what that means is all the way at 18mm and nice and wide, I've got f4 and can let a fair amount of light in, and then it zooms all the way to 105, giving you a much tighter shot, and I can still go as low as f4 and hopefully get a little bit of a blurry background. So just looking out for a couple of nice shots to demonstrate the advantages of that zoom range. So the first obvious benefit of a big zoom range like 18-105 is I can get a nice open shot, like you can see in this first picture here, showing both the lighthouse and a nice wee leading line there of the fence of at the beachfront. Or I could zoom all the way in from that same position and focus just on the lighthouse, and can do that all with the one lens. So what I really like about the zoom lenses is how versatile they are, and particularly if you're going out to take some photographs but you don't really know what of, or you've not got a specific photo in mind, the zoom range gives you that flexibility on, you might see something you stumble across and you think, oh, that would make a nice photo. Whereas if you're stuck with a prime lens that can't zoom in or out, you might be a little bit more restricted on what you can take a photograph of with that. Okay, so I've got another example here of where the zoom lens can be really handy. Looking at this first picture I've got of the lighthouse again, a little bit closer to it this time, this is taken at 18mm, you can barely see it, and I'm so far away from it that even on a prime lens like the one I've got with me today, the 35, I wouldn't be that close to it, and I'll show you a picture just now of what it would look like at 35mm, like so. But by being able to zoom in all the way to 105, I'm able to get a much nicer photograph of the lighthouse, where I've actually got a choice. I took two, where I can either put the emphasis on the foreground and have the grass nice and sharp, or I can put the emphasis on the lighthouse itself and use that foreground grass as a bit of a to add a little bit of depth into the image, give you a sense of scale there. Now that leads us on to what one of the negatives of a zoom lens is that it only goes down to f4, and when you try to isolate a subject, it's not as good at doing that as a fast prime lens that can go maybe down to f1.8. So I'm going to switch over now to the prime lens and try and find you an example of where that wide aperture can be really helpful. Okay, so the lens I've switched over to now is the 35mm f1.8, and this lens with that wide aperture can allow us to get a really blurry background and help emphasize a subject. So I'm going to see if I can find something I can take a picture of down here where I really want just that subject to stand out and I don't want any distracting elements in the picture. Right, just found a perfect spot where I had these meerkats sitting on a wall down in Fitty, and what I did, I've taken a couple of photos. I've taken two different compositions, and both of them at f1.8 but also at f4, so you can see what the difference is if we jump between the images at f1.8, and of the four meerkats you can see the background has pretty much melted away, and that's helped put the emphasis onto the meerkats themselves. Whereas if I compare that to the one at f4, it's not too much difference with this one, but you can see there is a little bit more detail in the background there, which might be a little bit distracting. So bit of an advantage there for the wider aperture. So this 35mm lens is a really great focal length because it's quite similar to what you can see with your human eye, so there's not much distortion in any of the corners, and it is representative of what we can see when we look at something. So it tends to be quite a popular focal length. That is on a crop sensor, pretty much a 50mm equivalent if you're looking at a full frame. And the other main benefit of prime lenses is they tend to produce images that are really, really sharp. I'm not going to try and demonstrate that on here because by the time I upload it to YouTube, the resolution will have compressed a bit and you probably won't be able to tell. And that's more for professional use, where you would really want some sharp images if you were going to print a photo to display it on a wall. So I've just came back to that first location where I showed you that first image. I'll flash it up on screen again just now, and this time I've taken the same, roughly the same image with the 35mm lens, just to show you how your field of view totally changes, and you don't have that much versatility with the prime lens, because in order to get everything in the photo that I had in that first image, I would need to move a lot further back. But doing that, I'm not going to get the same effect with that leading line of the barrier, and I'm also not I can't get the lighthouse in the picture without the fence blocking its view. So there are restrictions there with prime lenses that the zoom lens can overcome. One of the big benefits of a prime lens, though, is that by having that wider aperture, when it gets to lower light, so the sun's beginning to dip down a wee bit just now, but when it gets down to that lower light conditions, that wider aperture is going to let more light in, and it'll mean that I'll have less grain or noise in my images. I have done a video on aperture as well as shutter speed, so if you want to learn a little bit more about how grain affects images, I'll put the links for them in the description box below. Okay guys, that pretty much summarises what I wanted to put across in this video. Hopefully you've learned something about the differences between some zoom lenses and some prime lenses. A bit of advice from me is, personally, I used to prefer prime lenses, where I invested in quite a lot of money in them, but I much prefer the versatility of a zoom. Being able to change your focal length on the fly quite quickly, I find is just so much more convenient. And you can get a little bit creative with a more limited aperture, where you can get really close to things and have your background much further away to get that blurry background and put the emphasis onto your subject. Where I do still prefer primes is if I'm doing any professional work where there's either low light involved, or the customer might want to print some of the photos that they're taking. So for weddings and things like that, I would still favour primes. But yeah, that sums up my feelings on the two. If you've got any questions, just pop them in the comments box below and I'll try to get back to you. Thanks for watching.